Welcome to the Babies in Business Podcast. Join your hosts, Rachel and Avram Gonzalez, real-life parents and business partners. Each week on Babies in Business, Rachel and Avram create a space for entrepreneurial parents to find their own way. They'll dive into insights on topics like leadership, efficiency, self-awareness, budgeting, and human psychology as they nurture their family and build their business. Here's your hosts, Avram and Rachel.
It's February. At least that's when this podcast is coming out. We are revisiting one of the hot topics that we started in 2024 with a recap of the last 6 months of the Babies in Business podcast strategy for growth versus previous 6 months. Today, I'm not only joined by my co-host, Rachel, but we have our youngest son, August, with us here today. He's not napping. He just decided, I don't want to take a nap. And Mom and Dad, you still need to record, so I'm going to be here.
So he's eating my water bottle as we record. So if you hear some tapping in the background or some cooing.
That's just part of the game here at the Babies in Business podcast. A couple things we want to talk about today. And why we're talking about this is because life continues to move forward. The projects and things that you put in place a year ago, 6 months ago, are still moving forward. And it's our intentionality and the small changes that we make over time to our strategy that will help us reach our goals. I've talked about this at length in previous podcasts. If you try to do too much too soon, you're going to fizzle out, you're going to burn out, or things are just not going to work.
Right. You know, if you go from 0 to 100 all at once, you will break down pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. You know, think about a car that isn't meant to do that. You know,
yeah.
We're taking it easy and excited to be here.
That's right. And so one of the big things that we looked at a year ago in our strategy was, you know, how do we grow the podcast and earn more subscribers and
how do we measure that?
And how do we measure that? We're going to talk about how some of the data that we were looking at, we actually want to look at some different and maybe more impactful data. So we could have chosen some of the wrong metrics to look at. It's not really a big deal.
And that's neither here nor there, but, you know, it is to say that we are looking at what is meaningful and seeing that some things just don't quite add up at times. So we're just trying to find out what those data points are that we can rely on and that are true, maybe significant show of growth.
Yes.
Or listenership or whatever that looks like.
Yes. So one of the things, and we're going to put these charts in the show notes. So if you go to babiesinbiz.com/70, I think that's this episode, you can see the charts that we're going to include that have the performance of the Babies in Business podcast in the first 6 months of 2024 versus the second 6 months. And we'll link the past episodes there. We're not going to go through all the strategy and stuff in depth and the changes and why we made them. Those are in past episodes, but we'll link them up.
Yeah.
And the big change we made from the first half of the year to the second half was we decided we were going to increase the quantity of publishing, the frequency of publishing.
Yep. So we went from every other week to once a week.
Yep.
And I mean, it's exciting.
It is exciting.
It's putting out so much content now.
And that's big part thanks to our team, our growing team at Digital Harvest, the company that we own, our agency, being able to support us in creating the copy and creating all of the finished files and edits that need to be out there. If we were having to do that ourselves and putting in the 6 to 8 hours of work that each episode takes in addition to recording, it would never happen.
No way.
Yep. So shout out to the team in that regard. Now, let's talk about the first 6 months performance versus second 6 months. In the first 6 months, we were looking at the total downloads. So in previous episodes, you might have heard us talking about how we had almost 1,500 downloads in the first half of the year. Well, we were seeing some big spikes in the data, and that was exciting to us. In the second half of the year, we realized that these big spikes, for whatever reason, are happening in the first week of every single month and not necessarily correlated to the episode that's getting dropped.
Sure.
So we were looking at total podcast downloads, and that's not actually a good indicator of the real listenership.
Right. So we looked a little bit deeper and saw that the unique traffic that was coming through was really where it was at to actually track the number correctly.
Unique
so we
downloads.
did change what number we're looking at.
And so what we're looking at now is, okay, the first half of the year we had 761 unique listens for a total of about 13. Yeah, we'll just let him, he can be in the background. He's having fun. We had 13 episodes published in that time.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's call it 750.
Okay.
The second half of the year, we published 26 episodes.
So cool.
Very cool. So doubled the episodes and just got over 1,000 unique listens, 1,009. So what we learned was that increasing the frequency does increase total downloads and listenership, but it's not a one-to-one.
Yeah. We saw that it increased it a little bit, but yeah. We were just excited to see the change.
Well, it increased our downloads by about 50%.
So cool.
Right? So it's like, well, if the goal is to get more subscribers and more downloads, do we add more episodes to the plate? I think the answer is no.
No, but you know what we have done is really cool content opportunities. We have started to have our team go back through the episodes that have been previously published, which are 70, and create some blogs around those topics that can be found and just talk about some of that stuff. So we're creating different kind of content instead of all the social media stuff that we had begun with. We still do the announcements, but we do just spin-off content.
Yeah, we found and discussed at length in previous episodes that social media for the podcast and the fact that we're not doing video with it right now means that the content that we create is a lot of work for very little effort.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, for very little lift.
Very little, gain. You don't get much from it, but it is so much work.
It is so much work. So we know, it's like, well, we've harped on this, like the entire podcast. You have to really rely on your strengths.
Yeah.
And the resources that you have.
And part of our goal too in growing this was not increase the time that we dedicated to it.
Correct.
Or put towards it. So we're seeing that even though we are recording kind of double. The episodes, that doesn't increase our time because it's when we have the time. You know, babies can be napping or on the rare occasion in the recording studio with us. But we're just finding that doesn't increase our time significantly.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we look at what is the goal moving forward, what is the thing that we're testing in the next 6 months to a year, I don't think we're going to do another 6-month review. We might just wait for the year and give you the update.
I think unless
there's something
thing is great.
Unless there's something significant or mind-blowing or exciting that we want to share with you. But we do want to keep you in the loop, and tracking and growth and goals are a big part of this podcast.
And one of the things I think that's really cool about sharing this is actually is not even kind of. It is one of our strengths in our agency. As a search engine optimization agency, we look at data and we see trends. And then we refine what we're looking at and things like that. So it's really cool. You just get a little bit of a snippet of some of the strategy that we deploy with our podcast, but we do that for businesses to help them get found. So I just think it's really cool that we get to see real time and live for us.
It's true.
For our podcast.
It's true. So in looking at the next 6 months and looking at our goals, it was interesting. Somebody at the B2B Expo that we were at, we did a podcast about that a couple weeks ago. We were exhibiting for the Babies in Business podcast, asked me, what's the goal of the podcast?
Yeah.
And his assumption was that we just want to be like a Joe Rogan podcast and just have this huge thing.
And have these guests that are big name people. He's had Elon Musk on there, so many people.
And it was just not everybody has the same goals. Our goal is to not be prolific and in everybody's ears. Our goal is, from the beginning, we have enjoyed doing something together.
Yes, so much. Well, and we love having these conversations, and we have them regardless. And we thought, if we could help just one person, one family, one business, that would be enough for me. Just knowing that we could create connection and be as a resource.
Yes.
We don't have to be, like you said, in everybody's ear to do that. We're here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We want to make a difference here. Yeah.
And connection. Yeah. That's what, right? So connection for you and me, we're doing something together. That was the selfish part of it.
Yep.
Right? And the other part of it is connection with, like you're saying, these people and individuals. Maybe we know them.
Yep.
Maybe we don't know them yet.
Yep.
That are seeing some kind of benefit value from us sharing.
Well, and I thought it was really cool. This is kind of a spin-off benefit is, we go to Orange Theory. We've talked about that. We've had a couple episodes. There is this lady, you were on a call yesterday.
Okay, yeah, so somebody calls in yesterday and they're asking me questions about our services as an agency. And what I didn't know was that the co-founder was also in the room on speakerphone.
Yes.
So I'm answering all these questions, giving them some resources, and then the co-founder chimes in at the end and she's like, so I'm also here and I got a really weird question for you. And I was like, oh, I like weird. Like, let's let it rip. What's up? And she goes, do you go to Orange Theory? I was like, yes. She's like, oh my gosh, I'm sitting here thinking, I totally reckon this has gotta be the guy. She had listened to that day or the day before the podcast that we shared about our fitness journey this year so far.
The Transformation
Challenge at Orange Theory. And she had just listened to it and was like, that's a funny full circle moment. And that's just one of the cool ways that we're seeing the building of connection, especially in the communities that we're already a part of.
Yes.
That we create some content that's specifically catered towards them. In this case, it was anybody in our Orange Theory crowd, even if they don't have young kids or that's a thing of the past.
Right. Or a business.
They're interested in that particular piece of content that we created. So we shared it. They found it interesting. And now people are coming up to us at class that we didn't even know, or they're calling in and they're like, did I just hear you? And that's pretty cool. That is literally the goal
success.
for us. For us, that's success.
I think that's a huge success.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun. We have so much fun doing this. And our team, Barbara and Kim, that are really majorly involved in this, they really love the podcast. They love listening to it, editing it, creating the content that goes along with it. It's just a really awesome connection piece in so many ways.
Yeah.
With our team, they feel like they know us a little bit better, get some kind of like inside view. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, so plans for this year, they're going to help us on the search engine side by creating articles and things that will rank and show up on Google search or AI search. That's kind of where things are going. And that will help promote the podcast and bring people into our ecosphere based off of things we've already talked about. So that's the big move. The other thing that we're going to be doing this year is just building on more of that connection. We saw just how easy it was to connect with people at the B2B Expo this year.
Yes.
And so we're looking at one or two other events that they may not be 100% business related, but we know that busy parents will also relate to this podcast, even if they're not business owners.
Right, correct. Because, the strategies that we use with kids come from our business, but every parent can benefit from a little bit of help if they're looking for the help. Sometimes it's a different perspective.
Yeah. So
or just the permission to do exactly what you feel like you should.
Yeah. So it just seems pretty impossible to cut through the noise online these days. We're going old school. We're staying grassroots, connecting with people here, creating content that we know that the people that we know will like and appreciate and connect with. And that's where we're headed for the next year. Just more of this, 52 more episodes. Who knows? We might have a couple of guests. We might have a couple of special episodes. But we're going to continue the trend, watching things grow. It continues to grow. We appreciate your listenership in a really big way. What we're going to ask you for is, if you haven't already, to go on Apple, Spotify, wherever it is you're listening, give us that 5-star review so that other people can see this podcast and say, you know what? I'm going to listen to that too. We don't have a community question or anything this week because unless you have a podcast, you may not have some stats and things this year. Like, I'm not going to ask you, how's your podcast going? Maybe you don't have one. But we do encourage you to go check out babiesandbiz.com/70 for the show notes. You'll also be able to catch the previous episodes where we've tracked and talked about the growth and even created a whole strategic game plan. Like, we did these 4 episodes last year that were all about the strategy and how we executed, and we never missed a single podcast this last year.
Right.
I think we had 1 or 2 that were published on a Wednesday instead of a Tuesday.
Right, a little bit later, with baby being born in June.
But all of the stuff that we put in place in those strategic planning all paid off, allowed us to be consistent and get the thing done. So all that stuff's going to be in the show notes. Don't sleep on the show notes. We got excellent stuff over there every single episode. So with that, we appreciate you listening. We'll catch you on the next one.
Bye for now.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Babies in Business podcast. Who do you know that would benefit from hearing this episode? Share it with them and post about it on social media. You can find the show notes for this episode, free downloads, and connect with the rest of the community at babiesandbiz.com. We'll see you next time.